obviously your podcast. I'm working my way through the 108, 170, whatever it is now.
Power to Live More with Joe Dodds.
Welcome to the Power to Live More podcast, all about productivity, organisation, well-being, energy and resilience. I'm Jo Dodds, and I started this show to enable interesting people to share their stories about how they use their power to live more, and by that I mean to do the stuff that they want to do more than the stuff that they need to or should do. It's about creating a life for yourself where you have the energy, health and space to be happy and fulfilled, spending your time as you'd like, whether that be at work, home or somewhere else entirely. That's your choice.
Hello. My name is Ellie Dodds and I'm co-presenter, and today Joe's interviewing Emma Spence. Emma contacted us as a listener to the podcast, having been introduced to it via Mark Williams from show number 163. Joe was so pleased to be able to invite an obsessed listener, her words, on as a guest. She tells us that she listens to us whilst walking her dog on the beach every day. Having worked in various industries during her 20s, including travel and recruitment, she spent the latter part of her time working in London at The Economist. It was there in the mid-90s that she decided to make a dramatic change and escape to the country, and to study business and finance at Agricultural College. It gave her the life that she had been yearning for, out of London and the daily grind and commute. 2 years at college, while setting up a bookkeeping business of her own, put her in the perfect position to support her husband's desire to set up his own African safari business, Aardvark Safaris, where she was the handbrake, checkbook guardian and voice of reason. They had 2 children during those initial years and completely renovated a derelict house. Fast forward 10 years, her husband John realised that to conquer the world, well, the US market anyway, they needed to be in America. So in 2009, they packed up lock, stock and barrel and moved to the west coast of the US to San Diego. They started again from scratch with a new business, new schools, new house, new life. Their children were 6 and 9 at that stage, and it was a huge transition for them all. What was meant to be a 3-year adventure turned into a permanent life in California. Their family and friends stopped asking when they were coming home. 6 years later, her husband made the hard decision to separate the 2 businesses, UK and US, and for his business partners to keep the UK and for them to continue with the US business alone. They had planned to expand into other areas of the world. Africa was great, but they had all their eggs in one basket, and it was at that stage that they had a visit from the CEO and CFO of Scott Dunn, who wanted to expand worldwide and eventually bought their US business, and they became Scott Dunn USA. The last 4 years have been the hardest work, the steepest learning curve and some of the most rewarding years of Emma's career. She became more of a leader, understanding private equity and all the added pressures that brought and expanded a team from 8 to 36 talented young people. During this time, she had the great fortune to spend time with Mark Williams when he visited their team for some coaching training, and that is when she discovered what has turned out to be a passion for coaching. Unfortunately, her time as Scott Dunn has come to an abrupt end, as her new role covering L&D for the global business was not on the dramatically reduced structure. However, she is training to be a certified CTI Co-Active Coach, and in the meantime, search for a role that can use her 20 plus years experience and skills to good use. Back to the studio.
So today I'm interviewing Emma Spence, which is quite exciting because Emma's actually an avid listener to the podcast, and that's how the interview came about. So welcome, Emma. Great to have you with me.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here.
So we connected through Mark, who was on one of the previous shows, and you just sent me a lovely message on, I think, LinkedIn to say that you enjoyed the show. And so I gave you a little shout out, didn't I? How did that go?
That was so lovely because I listen to you every day. I'm walking my dog on the beach, just the perfect length of time. I listen to one of your podcasts, and I've been switched onto you through Mark Williams and Giraffe Pad. So I was listening to that, and then had to let you know that here on the west coast of America, the word was being spread. It was really good to hear your voice every morning.
Yes, that's lovely. Thank you. So tell us a bit about who you are, what you do, and as you've started to say, where you do it.
So yes, I'm based in San Diego. I've been here for 11 years. Currently, although I'm in transition, working for a luxury travel business, which is a global business based in the UK. And my husband and I have been running it for the last 4 years for Scott Dunn. And yeah, that's why we're based on the West Coast, 8 hours time difference. And I would do the money and people. My husband's the sales marketing. He's the president of the business. And I've for the last 20 years been basically for the travel business, been running the money and people.
Lovely. And so you're in San Diego?
In sunny San Diego, yeah. Right on the West Coast, 30 miles from Mexico.
Lovely.
About as far away from the UK as you can get.
Yes, yeah. I went to San Diego a few years ago to an event. You have quite a lot of conferences there, don't you?
Yes, big conference centre.
Yeah, I remember being along the sort of seafront and seeing the Coast Guard, which in little sunny Hythe where I live is like a little putt-putt fishing boat. and yours is like a big naval destroyer.
Yeah, I think it's the biggest naval base on the West Coast. So yeah, we've got a few of those in the harbour.
Lovely. So tell us a bit more about how you ended up doing what you do. I mean, I talk often, as you'll know, to guests and ask them, did you want to do this when you were at school? And obviously mostly the answer was, I didn't even know this thing existed. But I guess similar sort of thing. Did you always want to, live abroad? Was travel what you thought you'd be doing?
No, quite honestly. Like most people, fell into it. I met my husband 28 years ago, and he is a creative entrepreneur who was always going to push the boundaries, do the impossible, think up the wildest dreams. And I'm a very conservative, safe. I like to have everything double checked, health and safety. Don't take any risks. So the combination of the two of us actually has worked out fine. But I fell into working with him and setting up a business in the UK 21 years ago now, because I had the financial background. I'd worked in corporates, I'd worked in travel businesses, I'd worked in recruitment, I'd done a little bit of everything, and I'd realised that my talent was in the business and finance side, because I love to have columns that add up and straight lines and spreadsheets. That makes me happy. And so when he set up his African safari business with a friend of his, they'd both been whitewater rafters on the Zambezi in Africa. It was the sort of natural place for me to carry on. I already had a bookkeeping business to carry on doing all the financial side of things, to make sure that they didn't overspend the money and the budgets were adhered to, and all the stuff that needed to be taxes and all of that stuff was looked after. So I fell into it at that stage as the financial side of the business. 10 years of that, we had 2 children, we renovated a house at the time, so sort of dipped in and out a bit over those 10 years, but it was really at that stage that John decided he wanted to open an office in the US. That's where all the opportunity was for expanding the business. The UK was already quite a saturated market. So he said to me, I don't know, 3 or 4 times, I think we should move to America. I think we should set up a business there. And I was like, no. And my mum was like, no, because she had 2 grandchildren she didn't want to lose to the United States. And in the end, he brought me to San Diego, showed me around, we looked at the opportunity, and I couldn't see any good reason to say no. So at that point, which was probably on the 4th or 5th asking, we packed up and we moved, and he said, yep, we'll go for 3 years, we'll find somebody to take over the business, and then we'll come back. It's like, okay, I can live with that. Yeah. That was 11 years ago. So we set up a whole new business in the US from scratch, which was literally like setting up from scratch, even though we had a UK business running alongside it. We had to find banks, we had to get credit, we had to get the kids in school, and it was quite daunting, to be honest. And now I look back on it, it's like, how mad was that?
Yes, especially given your sort of, as you said, Miss Health and Safety, dot the I's and cross the T's and have all the columns adding up. You must have had to push those boundaries quite a lot during that time.
Yes, and I think, anybody who's set up a business or done something like that know that you run on adrenaline for quite a long time, and I've learned that's what I do, and that gets me through. Probably that first 3 years was all done on adrenaline. Definitely the first year. So you don't really think, you just do. You just get on with it, make it work. My husband's a great one for just saying, well, if we don't know the answer, we'll just go out and find the answer. We'll just keep asking people until we find the right answer. So he's very extrovert. He will, so I've got all the support of that. I'm a high functioning introvert, so I find it harder. Yeah. But yeah, it's being health and safety. I needed to have certain things locked down. I had to be very sure that we were doing the right thing when we set up as a business, that that we were ticking all the boxes. So as long as I had a certain amount of that, I'm good with it. But yeah, I do have I am a little averse to taking too much risk.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I've had people on here who work with their partner before a couple of times. It's not sort of that common in terms of my guests, but it sort of strikes me that it appears to have worked.
Yes.
And you said, the fact that you're quite different was helpful, but also just on the face of what you've told me already, it sounds like being quite different actually was also and could be quite difficult, because presumably from what you've said, your husband is quite likely to be sort of leading from the front saying, oh, this will, we'll work it out, let's go. And you're saying, hang on, we've got to add that column up, sort of thing. In itself, not everyone would be able to deal with, because that makes it much more challenging when people don't think like you. It has its advantages, but also disadvantages. And then you've got the whole thing about when does the work finish and when does personal life sort of start. How has that been? I mean, you've had many years experience of it now. It seems to have gone well.
Yeah, I think we still struggle with it. And it's, sometimes I look back on it and I think, well, that's just what our life has been. So why am I trying to change it? Maybe that's just fine. It's not always healthy. I think we could have done a better job of it. I think when you're first starting out, everything merges into one. So it's all about, it's as much about kids and what school they're going to and whether they're happy as whether the business is doing okay and you've got somebody employed and whether they turned up for work today. It all merges into one. I think it's had 3 sort of distinct phases, and I think it works for couples. And funnily enough, we've got a lot of friends who are married couples who are in business together, which I didn't really sort of realise until quite recently. I think when you're first starting out, there's a lot of strength, there's a lot of power in it both for you, because you do push on through, you do the crazy stuff that, you get back on your computer at midnight to sort something out, because you're doing it together. And that's fine. If you've got somebody else who's, maybe not as invested or whatever, then that's very hard. So there's a real power in it when you're first starting up. I think it's hard in the middle stage when you're running a business and you've got like 20 people, that it's hard for other people then to work for a married couple. And that's what I'm very aware of. That you think you can put up barriers for them because then they can't push on through. They know they can't get past you. If you're filling one side of the business and your other half's the other, then they've got nowhere to go. They can never be more senior. They can never be the vice president or whatever it is. Yeah. So I think, and I have recognised that a lot recently, that we got to the size before the pandemic. We got to the size where that I was a blocker for other people. So I don't think it's particularly healthy. And also, then they're always working for a married couple. They can't come to one without the other, and there's a lot of trust that goes with it and stuff, which I've worked really hard on. Yeah. But I think once you then get into a bigger organisation, if you're a couple working together, then it's fine, because there's enough people to spread it out. There's, you can actually ignore each other. I worked with somebody a few years ago who said that he and his wife worked in the same organisation, but and then people would start whispering, saying, "Oh, I think there might be an affair going on," because they had lunch with each other every day, but they didn't realise they were married. So I think you can lose yourself in a big organisation. So I think we were in that middle bit, wasn't very healthy, and actually, for what's happened over the pandemic and the transition I'm in now, I think ultimately it's a good thing.
Yes, yeah.
But it's a long time, so it's going to take some getting used to not working together. I mean, not getting involved or asking the questions or interfering.
Yes. So just at the beginning of this, we talked about there being 3 things that you'd learned, and I'm not sure if we've done the 3 or if there was something else you wanted to add before I change the subject.
From working together?
Yeah, I think you said there were sort of 3 main benefits or something towards the beginning of what we started saying. It's fine.
I think it's the really the pushing through when you're working together to start something. Then the transition time.
Yes, yeah. I think the other thing that can sometimes happen is it gets a bit cliquey. So it's not even that people feel that they can't go to one because they might tell the other or whatever. Because you sort of know each other so well, you can often exclude people unintentionally. Mentioning I work with Engage for Success, the national movement in the UK around employee engagement, and our former exec director became my best friend. I met her through the movement, and you're aware of her. She was Kathy Brown, who was on show 1 and show 150 and 200. Whichever. No, we haven't done 200 yet. Must be 150. And I remember one of our colleagues at one stage, and bearing in mind we work remotely, so we're not together very often at all, and we're all working from different parts of the country and all that sort of thing. I remember somebody making some comment about the fact that we were gluten-free together. and it was a really weird conversation because we neither of us eat gluten, and so it was all sort of a topic sometimes within team meetings or whatever. Things cropped up, or if we bought cakes, people made sure they were gluten-free or whatever. And then there was some comment about it being cliquey about gluten.
It's a special club you two were in.
Exactly. But it did make me realise that was naturally happening without us realising, sort of thing, because we knew each other well and we had lots in common, and we had sort of in jokes, and we'd worked together for a long time and everything else. Without intending to, we were excluding people while thinking that we were, including them, sort of thing. And I think that is something that could just inadvertently happen, because of the circumstance as well.
Yeah, and I think definitely there was there were some issues with, particularly globally, when you've got teams on the other side of the world who are trying to communicate with you. That it was a problem that the 2 of us were married, and they didn't know who to go to, or it was confusing messages or whatever it was. It's something to really look out for in a business.
So you touched on your current transition. So there's been a few changes as a result of the pandemic. So sort of tell us a bit more about what you're doing now, what's happening, what your plans are.
Yeah. So last November, we sort of had a change of emphasis for my role, as well as John was sort of taking on, the full president role, because we had some movement around with our international director, and the CEO offered me the position of a leadership and development role with the global business, rather than just doing the money and people in the US. And we were going to take on an HR manager to take over all the HR side of things. Our finance manager was coming through and doing a great job, taking on a lot more of the financial stuff for me. So I was, taking a little bit of a sidestep into the learning and development. And I've always wanted to do my coaching qualifications. So I started my coaching qualifications, was moving into a transition of 6 months into learning and development global role. So it was a big change for me. And actually, to be honest, it was, I found it quite hard. When I look back on it now, I think, well, what was my problem? But it was because it was change. It was something new. All my saboteurs walked into the room and were like, "You can't do this. Why? What do they think they're doing?" So that was I was getting my head around it, and that was taking a bit of time because I had a lot of insecurities about it. And so, February I was in London at the our head office, and I was like, okay, no, maybe I can do this, and this is all going to be good, and I really got myself on track. And then obviously the COVID hit, luxury travel market, the no sales, everybody wants a refund. There's no business for the future coming in. We had the horrible task of laying off 21 of our 36 staff, and in that process, there wasn't a role for me any longer in the wider business because it wasn't a crucial role. So I'm on a 6-month notice, so I was lucky enough to be able to work out my notice. But it sort of changed everything. I didn't carry on doing my coaching because they cancelled everything because it was all in-person coaching courses, and they haven't quite got themselves online yet. But now we're back online for the coaching. I'm doing that, and I've got actually a workshop this weekend. I had one a couple of weeks ago, so I'm feeling really excited about that. So I will go through and do my coaching qualification. But yes, I'm moving out of the business from being an in-house coach and doing the learning development and getting involved in that to out there on my own. So I'm in the position where I'm looking for either a job within a company to pick up on the coaching, but maybe some of the business consulting because of my financial background, or setting up a consultancy on my own, which right now feels like the big scary one. But I'm just trying to work that through at the moment.
Yes. And so you might not remember this all the time, but on the positive side, you have been through a whole setup of a business where you demonstrated your abilities and resilience. And I guess
yes,
you're having to check out those memory banks at the moment.
Yes.
Yeah. So interesting. So what sort of things have you done, or are you thinking about doing in terms of sort of moving that forward? So are you still, I mean, a lot of us are still in sort of limbo with the pandemic and not quite sort of knowing what next steps are. Have you got into the next phase, or are you still sort of in that sort of self-care bit of it, trying to sort of work out that route?
Yeah, I would say I'm still trying to figure that out. I think honestly, I did a very deep black hole to begin with. Then I came out into the sort of self-care. We can do this, and that this was with a lot of help and support from other people, colleagues, and etc. And now, and I have to say, because you got caught at a really good time, I've seen a lot of articles about looking after yourself, taking a break, all of those things. John and I took a 2-week break. We did a road trip to the national parks of Utah and Nevada. And I have to say that's the best thing that you can do, is actually rest your brain.
Yes.
Stare out of the window, do nothing, think about nothing, let it all just settle.
Yes.
And I hadn't allowed that to happen up until now. It was always like, I still got so much to do. I've got a lot to do to pack up everything and make sure everything's filed in the right place and everybody's got what they need. I haven't really let everything settle in. So that's made a huge difference. It's made me feel like, okay, stuff is possible. There are opportunities out there. I listen to people that you interview about things that they do that it's like, okay, well, that's a really good idea. I could do that. I've got experience working with private equity, which is not easy. I've set up a business. I've run a business on the other side of the world that's got a global headquarters in the UK.
Yes.
I can work with businesses and people who struggle with that every day, and hopefully have some sort of X-ray of how people are feeling about that, whether maybe the management aren't struggling because their senior management and leadership team have got so embroiled in the private equity, you've got to produce numbers all the time, that their teams don't know what to do or what's expected of them or how to interact with each other or communicate. I feel like I've got a niche there because of my experience. So I am definitely coming out, understanding what I've got to offer, and now I've just got to figure out how I do that. The coaching, going through the coaching course and the different modules has really helped me, because you're doing it to yourself at the same time. So that's been hugely helpful.
Well, thank you for sharing. It's this interview will be live in October, so we're interviewing currently in the middle of August. So just to give people some perspective on sort of timings in terms of the pandemic, and it is really interesting. You know, I've said many times that at the beginning it was a bit black and white. You know, we had to lock down, and like you said, you know, awfully had to make people redundant and all that sort of stuff. There was quite a clear path at the beginning, and then it became sort of a bit about, you know, what's going on and how can we best get through it and everything else. And then it felt like as things were starting to open up again, it was like 10 times more complicated than it was at the beginning. There's so much variability and flexibility needed, and opportunities and the opposite of that and all that sort of thing. And it's interesting you talk about having that sort of time. I took on some coaching at the beginning of the time, at sort of March time, and it's meant that my diary's quite full every week, which was really good for me in terms of, you know, my income and stuff when it could have been much worse. But and also, you know, I felt a bit, I've said on the podcast before, I felt a bit shortchanged that I didn't get a chance to, you know, learn all these new languages or do embroidery or whatever, because I was too busy.
Get that sourdough starter going.
Exactly. But it's interesting that I sort of feel, because I've got these things in my diary that I don't normally have, I sort of feel a bit like I've got a job at the moment. And I've actually, for the first time in years, planned next week to actually take a week off. And I've put off all my coaching calls and, you know, podcasts that I would have been interviewing, that I would have been doing and saying, literally to just have a week. And we're going to the caravan, just literally half an hour up the road. So we're not really venturing out very far. But I always call the caravan my happy place. But it's interesting that normally I work when I'm away anyway, but it's just stuff that I like to do, like I would do on a weekend sort of thing when no one's clamoring for anything. But I am really thinking about, you know, reading a book, or just, as you said, just sitting and not actually doing that work next week, and actually even putting my out of office on, all that sort of stuff. I never do that, and I don't have a problem with that, because I sort of, as again, you'll know from listening to the podcast, I sort of schedule stuff to suit me, and if I want to go and do something, I'll go and do it, and I'll work at odd times and all that sort of stuff. So I never feel like I need to do something like that, if you like, but I have a real need for that at the moment. I feel like, you know, I need a week off, and I never say that, as I say, so it's really weird, but I think it's the same sort of thing, that we need some processing time, and I haven't had mine yet, because I ended up doing more during this time rather than less, and I think that's what it sort of culminated in. So it's not easy to do straight away. It's not you can't just decide, okay, I'm just going to take the week off and do it, because your brain doesn't calm that quickly. No. I mean, when we first got to, we were staying with some lovely friends up in Park City, that we were just, I was pacing around the room. I couldn't settle. I couldn't sit. I couldn't just, you know, be. And that was, you know, even with a couple of days driving. So you have to force your brain to not do anything, not to look at your phone, not to think about that. And that's a real discipline. But I tell you, it paid off. It really did pay off. Yeah, no, that's great to hear. So let's talk a bit about just sort of generally, you know, sort of life-changing things to one side. How do you normally operate in terms of getting stuff done and you know, knowing what you want to do and making sure those things happen and so on? Do you have certain sort of strategies and ways that you do that, and you know, how do you use technology, or are you one of my regular pen and paper guests? I'm afraid I am. Love a pen and paper. Yeah, I mean, you know, running, you know, a house and a business and
I've got one child on the other side of the world at college, university in England, and my daughter here. I'm a writer list. I have a A4 bound hardcover book. It has to be that. I don't know why. That's just what works for me. And I only have specific types of pens.
Yeah.
Now I sound really weird. But there's a certain pen, and there's blah blah blah, colours, lots of colours.
Yeah.
And it's a bit like a shopping list. If you've written a shopping list, you don't actually need to take it with you to the shopping to shop.
Yeah.
Because once you've written it down, it sticks.
Yeah.
I write loads and loads of scribbles, drawings, whatever. I highlight things in my book, and I can visualize where I wrote things. So if I need to go back to a meeting, a month ago, I kind of know it's on the left-hand side of the page where I've written something. I can visualize that. It's not a photographic memory, but it's there. I do little boxes that I have to go back and tick if it's an action point. And if I need to, then I translate it. But I translate it onto an Excel spreadsheet because that's what I like.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah.
Has to be Excel.
Yeah. And Excel's my friend. That was a trick actually that our CEO, a previous CEO, taught me. So it's a list, but then it's got a column that prioritizes it. So you have the red, orange, green prioritization. So you can just type in red and it goes red. You can program it to do that. So then you can sort it by the red, and so your urgent list you can sort. Then you've got all your different columns that you can sort it by. So having that huge list in front of you is always so daunting. But to then just filter it into things I need to do this week, next month, just takes it down to, so you can actually see it on one spreadsheet. Somebody said to me that I think our brain can only handle 5 things at a time. So if I can get it to 5 things to that priority, I will.
Yes.
So that's how I organise myself. I am hideous at my email inbox. Everybody, I've got so many people around me say, I've only got 10 things in my inbox. I'm like, how do you do that? I've read the, how to have a clean inbox and so much stuff. And I was like, no, can't do it. I might want to come back to it. I might want to read it.
Do you know what?
It's there.
Do you know what, Emma? Before we started, I asked you which the latest podcast was that you've been listening to, and you said it was the lovely Penny Pullen. And you started by saying, oh, and she's so organised and she's just like so calm, and I don't know if you want to interview me now. I can tell you the bit we didn't mention on that podcast, I don't know why we didn't get around to it, is she has thousands and thousands of emails in her inbox.
Oh, that's such a relief.
And when I say thousands, I mean like thousands. Into 5 figures. And she uses it, like you've just said, she uses it like sort of a filing cabinet. She uses her search and she just knows that it's all there, and she just does that. She doesn't need it to be clear. So don't worry, you don't need to be more Penny. You are more Penny already.
That's such a relief. Thank you. It's my guilty secret. I've just revealed, and it's like, I feel, people, if they're looking over my shoulder, they're like, how many have you got in your inbox?
The thing is, with this productivity stuff, there's so many like guilt trip things that are laid on us. So that whole miracle morning thing, you've got to get up at 5 o'clock or 3 o'clock and have it done by 5 o'clock. And I a long time ago realised that mornings are just not my thing, so that's never going to happen. And exactly that, mailbox inbox zero. People go on about that, and then you start to feel inadequate if you've got 3 in there, never mind thousands. And actually it's all individual. It's about being really clear about what works for you and doing that. And I think the only time you need to pay attention to what everyone else is doing is if it's not working and you want to find a different route, sort of thing. I was showing somebody my inbox the other day, not my inbox, my to-do-ist, my to-do list app, and I was trying to sort of say to-do-ist is really simple and really straightforward, and it's really easy to use, but you can also make it as sophisticated as you like, and I've used it for years now, so I have got it really set up in lots of detail.
It works for you.
And a bit like you were just saying, that you can get different views, so you only have like 5 tasks. That's how I do it. I slice and dice my to-do list by tagging it in all sorts of different ways, so I can create all sorts of different filters so that when I look at my list, there's hardly anything on it and I can tick it off. And that's how I get through my list. But of course, the people who were looking at it were like keeling over.
I have no idea what that is.
In there. And one of them said, you have lots of what you do is very transactional, very sort of, she meant not very strategic, because it's all very sort of lots of little tasks, and it's like there are things that I do every day as routines, so I can take that as not as criticism. I can acknowledge that, but actually it only looks like that because I break things down into these daily routine tasks in order for them to get done on a sort of low number figure to-do list, rather than it being a project, which would just completely daunt me because it would be too many moving parts on the same page.
Yeah, and I that resonates with me because it is task based. A lot of my job's been task based, so that that's how it works. And I mean, nothing better than ticking something off on your to-do list as done. I mean, you've got to have things on there that you can tick off.
You must put things on there once you've done them to tick them off sometimes too.
Absolutely, yeah.
Especially when you're doing it on pen and paper. I don't do it so much on technology, but yeah, when I used to write my to-do lists, I definitely used to add things on and tick them off because it's a accomplishment.
Absolutely. I had a look at Todoist when you were, because I'd heard you talking about it a few times, and I signed up for. I'm getting the newsletters, but I haven't really had the chance to really get stuck into it. But perhaps that's something. That's one step forward I should make. I do like the color coding on the Outlook inbox anyway. Where you can have different colors, so you can just filter that. So.
Yes.
Oh, I'm hugely relieved to know that I'm not the only one with zeros on the end of my inbox.
I'll send Penny a message. She'll be pleased that she's inspired. There's another one. It's a spreadsheet tool that it's sort of like Excel, but it's like Excel on steroids. That might be one worth looking at. And I'm trying to think who mentioned it. It's been on a podcast somewhere along the line. But yeah, it's if you just sort of do a bit of Googling, it's something pages or something, but it's like Excel, but it's more like a sort of database type scenario. So for people who like that linear sort of way that Excel's worked out, it works quite well. So that might be worth a look as well. It'll probably pop up in my mind about 2 hours later, so I'll add it to show notes and send you an email. Lovely. So let's talk a bit more. You talked about sort of having that time to stop. You did your sort of trip away and calmed yourself and so on. What sort of things do you do to keep you energized to get on with life generally? You talk about walking your dog every morning and listening to my podcast, so that's
yes. Yeah, I mean, I've never been good at carving out time for myself or any of that. It's just life always seems too busy, kids and business and whatever. So I think I got myself into a bit of a rut of our office is very close to the home, but I find myself getting in my car and driving to the office. It's like it's a 2-minute walk. What am I doing? Yeah. Oh, I need to go to the supermarket afterwards, so I'll take the car. Just crazy stuff like that.
Very American as well, though, isn't it? Very California.
Very American. Because we don't have a pavement to walk on, so you have to walk on the road. I mean, so anyway, things have changed. My lovely 17-year-old daughter, who is always in tune with my mental health and is the most sensible person in our family. At the beginning of lockdown, and she's been pushing me to have a new dog. We've always had dogs. Yeah. I lost my I had a long-haired Dachshund that died very young. He was only 2.5 when he died about 3 years ago. And I've just been like, no, we haven't got space for a puppy now. We were just not, too busy, too much of a tie, traveling too much, blah, blah, blah. When she saw her opportunity when lockdown started and started showing me pictures of cute puppies that had been rescued and we could just foster. And so she signed up for all the foster places in my name without me knowing, forged my signature and everything. And then just kept showing me pictures of dogs, ridiculous, Alsatians that, it'll be fine. It's only going to be with us for a month. So one Sunday morning, the classic marketing line, look at this puppy, Mummy. We've got an hour to decide.
she gave you a deadline.
She gave me a deadline.
And,
so I was like, I don't know. Talk to your father. Classic line. So they decided that this was a good idea and that they were going to go down to the Mexican border to pick him up late on a Sunday night. I was like, you just organise it all. As long as he's got some food, that's fine. But I was really sort of separating myself from it. So long story short, at 9 o'clock at night, some people turn up with this puppy in the back of a car with many other dogs and kind of handed him to us in a crate with half a can of food and, screeched away. So we're like, okay, so we've got a dog. Couldn't get near him for the first 24 hours because he was so nervous. Being picked up on the streets in Tijuana and just across the border in Mexico. And so he was a foster, I suppose a foster.
Yeah.
And within about 3 days, we realised that he was going to be ours forever. And he's a young, strong, fit dog, so he needs plenty of exercise. So I was up at 6 o'clock every morning and out on the beach, and that's when I started listening to your podcast. And so now I've got routine. It's I'm taking some exercise. I feel so much better. I'm trying to walk at least. Trying to get to the 10,000 steps a day, but on average doing about 8, weekends maybe 15, which is gone from about 300 steps a day previous to that. And it's done my head a lot of good getting out there. And it's just, my daughter knew that's what I needed, and that I was sitting at my desk 12 hours a day worrying about stuff, getting just really into a dark place. So big change in routine.
Well thank her from me, because that gave me a new listener and a new guest.
Absolutely.
Brilliant.
And I love podcasts. Podcasts are I don't read a huge amount because I am a very slow reader. And so I find it frustrating. I can't get through things quick enough. And also I read and I fall asleep because I do it at 10 o'clock at night and fall asleep immediately. So I'm much better audio. And I love listening to podcasts. I listen, to all sorts of stuff, a lot of BBC-based stuff because it's, my connection with England. I listen to, I don't know if you've listened to Walking the Dog podcast, which is hilarious. And then things like Saturday Morning Live, a bit of comedy, fortunately, with Fee Glover and Jane there. That's hilarious. And then just Simon Sinek is also, because when I first heard him in the US, I was like, oh, he's got a little English accent in there. There's something, he is actually English, but been in America a long time. And then obviously your podcast, I'm working my way through the 108, 170, whatever it is now.
Yeah, you'll be 177, so you've got a few to go.
Yay. There's some really great stuff out there. And I switched between the sort of, Brené Brown and the motivational and the work stuff, and then throw in a bit of comedy and or Desert Island Disc. So my phone is mainly photographs and podcasts.
I've listened to far fewer since we've been on lockdown, because I generally do it when I go out walking, and when I've been walking at home on the treadmill, I've been watching something instead, because just looking at the wall in my porch didn't really appeal. So I'm surprised my podcast listening stats have sort of picked up a bit and are fairly static. I was expecting them to go up, and then on my experience go down. But a lot of people did go walking, so hopefully. Yeah,
and I think the thing of having your earbuds or headphones on constantly, I started sleeping with my headphones in, and I got into all those sort of bad habits that I need to go back to sleep listening to a podcast, so I need to go back to sleep to, it's a really bad habits that actually need to sleep normally.
Addiction.
And
I've not heard of that before.
I think it is an addiction. I think it started with, there's some great podcasts, but they are quite good for going to sleep to. And I'm not including any of those above that I talked about, but some things that just talk about how things work, or how does neuroscience work, and you just switch it on, and it's fantastic for jet lag, and it's something my sister put me onto. With jet lag, you just wake up in the night, you just put a podcast on for 20 minutes and then go back to sleep without putting the lights on and reading. But it's sort of, that then became the normal.
Yes, yeah. You reminded me, actually, I saw it on Graham Norton, of all things. I think it's the app, is it Headspace? One of the meditation apps. They've had famous people record stories like that you could listen to send you to sleep. And one of them is Matthew McConaughey. He's got his voice at the best of times. So him, and I think Stephen Fry might have done one of them as well, I think. But yeah, I don't know if it is Headspace, but it's one of the meditation or the sleep apps. There's actually a whole series of basically bedtime stories which, as you just said, do help you to nod off. So yeah. Okay. So last couple of questions. First one, what about those days where it all goes horribly wrong? How do you deal with those days?
I have to isolate myself. I just need to be on my own. I just remove myself from, and I actually need time on my own anyway. But
yes,
when it all goes wrong, just remove myself, sit on my own in my room, or go for a long walk, whatever. But no, it's just, or just get in the car and drive away. Actually, sometimes, it's just to be on my own and reset. Good night's sleep and start again the next day.
And what about those days where you get to live more, and that's about doing more of the things that you want to do and less of the stuff that you don't want to do? What do those days look like for you?
They generally involve good friends, being outside, definitely food. I've got some lovely friends in San Diego that I spend time with. We discuss all sorts of things. A long walk on the beach with a couple of friends and a flask of tea and cake at the end of it, which is very un-American. They think we're mad when we get our tea towel out and have tea. But I've got a lovely Australian and Danish friend that I do that with a lot, and that's so restoring. And just and also just here, jumping in the sea, getting your head in the water. The Pacific isn't always that warm, so it's a perfect time of year now. But for me, it's just being outside, and also I love having people around me. I love entertaining. I don't like being the centre of attention, so I love feeding people having a good time, people making connections, introducing people together, and then just kind of standing back and watching it, if that makes sense. That's what makes my heart sing.
Sounds like some great traits for a future coaching business.
I hope so. I mean, I love coaching. It's like a really good party. If I've got a team, we've had some lovely coaching sessions or just sessions, team building sessions with our team in the US. Unfortunately, before a lot of them left us. But if I do half a day in a room doing some team building, and the time goes so fast, and I come away feeling so happy and well, that was easy. And it wasn't easy, but it's because it makes my heart sing. So it's what I want to follow, that feeling, to come out of the room feeling like, oh, that was good. Feel really, invigorated by that, and the time went really quickly, and I don't feel exhausted by it.
No. So how can people find out more about you and connect with you, Emma?
Well, I'm not really out there, which is something I'm working on. I haven't recently introduced LinkedIn profile, so that's easy to find. But before that, I'd sort of missed that boat completely, because for 20 years I haven't been looking for a job. I mean, my last CV was written in MS-DOS, so it was not something that I had out there on the outside world. So, and then I felt, well, if I put it up there, people are going to notice and think, oh, why has she only just done that? So anyway, I've done it, and I'm working on how to make that work for me for looking for work. So that's sort of my project for the next few weeks. I'm on Facebook and Instagram, but it's really, really boring. It's just pictures of cakes, basically. And then, your LinkedIn, I guess, is the main place.
By the time it goes out, it might be an all singing and dancing profile.
Exactly.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Emma. It's been great interviewing you and getting to know a bit more about you after just knowing that you walked your dog on the beach.
Well, thank you. Really, really appreciate it.
All this information is available in the show notes if you go to powertolivemore.com/, in this case, 178, then you'll find them there. And this week I want to talk about my 30 days of inspiration that I kicked off on the 1st of October. It's a daily email from me that takes you through to a blog post on my website, giving you ideas and tips and strategies to enable you to live your best life now. It's such a time of uncertainty and potential turmoil and challenge for lots of us at the moment. And I just wanted to add some inspiration into the world and just help you to think about what you can do to live your best life now, regardless of what's going on around us and the fact that things are uncertain. We don't know what's going to happen in the future and all that sort of thing. You know, we can easily put our lives on hold while we're waiting to see what happens with the whole pandemic and, you know, think, oh, I can't do any of these things for now. I just need to sort of hunker down and wait and see what happens. And, you know, we've potentially been doing that since March now. And, you know, there doesn't seem to be any sign that things are particularly abating and in fact sound like they're in some ways potentially getting worse. So I really think it's important to intentionally think of the things that you can do to make your life what you want it to be, even, you know, despite what's going on around us. And so that's where the 30 days of inspiration came from. You don't obviously have to follow all of the advice and all tips that are in there, but hopefully some of them will work for you and be something that you want to try and to focus on. So if all you have to do is go to powertolivemore.com/living your best life now, and you just sign up there, and as I say, you'll get a daily email from me and it'll take you through to the blog, and you can just read a piece of inspiration every day to help you to think about living your best life. And you can unsubscribe at any time if you don't think it's very useful, but hopefully you will stay with me, and then you'll also get my weekly emails, which has my newsletter with some useful content on there for you. And please do share with other people if there's anyone you think could be helped by reading that information and getting some inspiration themselves in how to live their best life now, then please do forward on that URL to them. Again, it's powertolivemore.com/living your best life now. And it's running all the way through October 2020, but it will still be on my website as an evergreen opportunity once that's been and gone. So if you're listening to this podcast and it's later than October 2020, then you can still go to that link and it'll still kick you into the 30 days of inspiration, starting with the day that you join. If you're joining sometime during October, then it'll take you to the latest post, and it'll also give you links to all the previous posts so that you can go back and look over them as well. So it doesn't matter when you arrive on day one, you'll still get all the information over the time, either through October or in 30 days from whenever you start. So again, it's powertolivemore.com/living your best life now. And again, the show notes are at powertolivemore.com/178. And we look forward to speaking to you next week.
Use your power to live more.